Hello and welcome to this review of Ubuntu Studio 19.10. Now let's get straight on to business first. Apparently it is actually pronounced Eoan Ermine, not Eoan Ermine as I said before. Now that out of the way, let's roll the intro. And so here we are with Ubuntu Studio 19.10 Eoan Ermine, and this is actually the halfway point between the release of 19.10 and what's going to be the release of 20.04. The current date is the 18th of January 2020. So I've been using this for a good, 4 months at this point. What do I think of it? What's better? What's worse? What have I changed? Let's find out. So first things first, as you can see, it's quite a bit more customized than it was in my last video, which you can see up here, which is just a first look at the distribution. I have gone whole hog into customizing it, and actually one of the big points I want to talk about is how happy I am with the latest version of XFCE, which came out last year, which is XFCE 4.14, I do believe, replacing the very, very old, by this point anyway, XFCE 4.12, and many features have been added back into this, which is making it simply my favorite desktop environment. Now, actually, before I came to using XFCE, I was really into using GNOME, but it wasn't quite as usable as I thought it could be. There was some things that just weren't working quite right. It was a little bit unstable. It's a really good desktop environment, don't get me wrong, but just wasn't quite doing everything I needed it to. And then I actually spun up XFCE on an old laptop that needed something a little bit lighter to run it, and just loved the functionality. But over the past couple of versions of it, as you've seen on my previous videos of this, I've always had it looking slightly different. It's never quite right. It never quite had that same spark that GNOME had. And with this, I've actually now, with the new version of XFCE, with new things like transparency re-enabled and everything else, I've been able to make it somewhat GNOME-ish. It's my GNOMEd up version of XFCE, but with all the trimmings and all the bits I would actually like. So what I've kept is I've moved the top bar to the bottom, and it works kind of like a sort of a Windows style bar. I have the time and date down here, network and sound, but that's all I've got down there. Unlike we didn't have the normal notifications, they've moved up here. I've added a little system monitor bit there. I've actually replaced the XFCE one with the Mate one because I think it looks a bit nicer. And I have a desktop button here and a desktop button there because just depending where my mouse is, I might want to see the desktop from a different position. I of course have a quick launch for Firefox for my terminal and for not Thunar. Thunar is the standard file manager for XFCE, and although it's very, very good, there are certain features in it which, well, either I can't seem to work out how to use them, or they're just not there, such as being able to just go in by root, just straight, just from whatever file you're in. So I actually replaced it with Nemo, the one that comes with the similar desktop environment, the one that's been designed by the Linux Mint team. Let's have a quick look at that. So here we go. It looks very similar actually to the to Thunar, but it's just got couple more things I'd like to add in. I actually did replace Nautilus with Nemo when I used to use GNOME, so that's a nice addition. But down here, just finished a little tour here, I've replaced the normal Ubuntu Studio logo that's on the whisker menu with Tuck the Penguin, and I have everything set up there nicely. But what I also have is this beautiful sidebar, which looks very much like the one you can get in GNOME if you use the dash to dock, I think it is. And before, I could never get this to be completely transparent. It's also set to intelligent hide, so when I open that up, it'll close. And I'm working on this right now. If I have this menu up here, I've actually got two whisker menus, just depending where I fancy being more Windowsy or being more sort of GNOME. And if I go on to just all, I can scroll down here and I can easily type. Let's look at OBS, for example, and get it straight from there. This is a really nice feature. I like this very much, and yeah, I've very much enjoyed using this desktop environment in this particular version, and yeah, I can't sort of sing its praise anymore. What I've also added up here is a little notification area with certain little widgets and stuff on, stuff like, for example, a CPU monitor up there, which you can't see right now. It actually has no background, so if I make this full screen, it fits in there nicely as well. And I also have the conky, and I've changed my desktop background. That's how I've customized it, and this has now become my perfect desktop environment, my perfect layout. It's got all the functionality and all the usefulness of the GNOME that I liked using, but with all the stability and just the greatness I find out of XFCE. So I'm really happy about that addition. Now, one last thing I want to talk about, just on the topic of desktop environments, before we go sort of more in depth with Ubuntu Studio and sort of Ubuntu Studio related stuff and creative related stuff, I just wanted to talk about one thing that I mentioned in the initial first look video, but that I actually haven't been able to test, which is the fact that as well as downloading Ubuntu Studio as the distribution itself and installing it with the XFCE desktop environment, you can actually use it as sort of like an Ubuntu Studio installer, which I think is like a meta package, which you can install on other spins and flavors of Ubuntu that use different desktop environments to essentially set up the whole of Ubuntu Studio just without XFCE in case you don't like it. So say for example you'd rather use KDE Plasma, you could spin up something like Kubuntu and then use the Ubuntu Studio installer to actually have Ubuntu Studio but with KDE instead of XFCE. Now that's obviously a massive thumbs up to anyone who just doesn't really like using XFCE or has like another desktop environment they'd rather use. But for me, it's something I haven't been able to test simply because I just like XFCE. Now, before we carry on into more sort of Ubuntu Studio specific parts of it, I'd like to put a thank out to Eric Eichmeyer, and I hope I have done your name justice this time, Eric. He is one of the developers over at the Ubuntu Studio project, and consistently on all the videos I've done on it, he's actually commented feedback and other things, sort of talking about my suggestions and things he likes or things he'll look into. There's no bull with this man. He will go and do it. In one of my previous videos, I criticised the fact that OBS wasn't something that came as standard in Ubuntu Studio, and the man went out and did it, and now it is. So this particular project in the open source world, I find to be just, I don't know, it's sprung into life. If the ball gets rolling and an idea wants to be put out there, it'll certainly at least be considered. Just using it and just putting suggestions out there, even though I'm not like a contributor or anything, just makes you feel far more active and far more involved in it. And yeah, it's like everyone who's in it just wants it to be the best it possibly can. And yeah, to me, this is the best it possibly can. Let's just talk first about why you would want to use this. If you're a creative type, for example, so I use this for some music work, but also a lot of video production work. This is set up right out of the box for you. So the first thing to look at here is the kernel, which if you're unsure what that is, it's basically the piece of software that interacts between your software, so for example, like a DAW, and the actual hardware itself. And this is the Linux low latency kernel, so there's a generic sort of variety of it, but this is the low latency one, so anything you do, for example, if you're using like a musical keyboard, this is actually going to reduce the latency. It'll get rid of just that little bit more latency, just so you can have everything as sort of as timing perfect as possible. We want to do as little quantizing as possible as musicians. We want to have everything to be sort of spot on as we can. And not just that, but compared to Windows 10, simply using Linux I find to be so much more useful for my musical hardware. So, for example, one of the interfaces I use is an old M-Audio M-Track Plus, which I actually cannot run on Windows 10 out of the box. As in, if I were to plug it in, there's no sort of plug and play properties. It'll give you a bit of sound first. You get the boom, 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 and then it just goes. Now, it's very easily resolvable. You simply go on their website and you get a very old, out-of-date driver, and you install that, and it works fine. And it does work absolutely fine. But on Linux, none of that needed. Plug and go. Everything works on this, all the phantom power, all the ins and outs, MIDI, everything just works just fine. No need for hassle. So, for example, if you're running, say, a really old version of Windows, you potentially might not be able to get that driver working. So, say, for argument's sake, I'm still using this in 15 years' time. What if Windows doesn't support that anymore, and the driver that they've packaged can't work on that version of Windows? The likelihood is that it'll still work under the Linux kernel, and loads of studios out there have equipment which is decades old at this point, and if it works well, and if it sounds good, why would you need to get rid of it? So I find it very, very useful for things like that, and stuff like my MIDI keyboard and stuff, it just works. It just works to me. No need for extra hassle. Like, MIDI keyboard's the same thing. I have to get a load of extra drivers, whereas in this, boom, just works out the box. Simply the plug-and-play nature, as a lot of, sort of musical hardware like mixing desks tend to be, working with like patch bays and other stuff like that, you simply plug it in and it works. And we get the same thing here. What you would also get, if you're talking about the musician's front, is Jack. It allows you to run all the audio from your computer as if it is a patch bay. So for argument's sake, if you're using a DAW, say in this case the one that comes packaged is Ardor, you might want to run some audio that you're running, say, from Firefox. So simply you'd patch Firefox's audio into Ardor's audio, Bob's your uncle, it's done. Something else is it obviously supports loads of plugins, and one of the new features with this particular release of Ubuntu Studio has been to actually add in a load of additional plugins. But say you have one which just works sort of, say it's a piano simulator, for example, and it only runs within itself, like it won't run within your DAW. Simply run it, send Jack, as you would do with Jack patch cables, from it into our DAW. Boom. There it is. It's gone straight through. It takes the concept of incompatibility and throws out the window and allows it to be compatible, so you can simply get on with actually recording and writing your music. Speaking of writing music, this version has had an updated MuseScore, so no need to have old MuseScore 2. You can have the proper up-to-date version. And as someone who quite frequently has to write, arrange, and print music, I'm finding more and more that I'm starting at this point to use MuseScore as much as, maybe overtaking potentially, Sibelius, which has always been my go-to music writer for sort of non-guitar based work. Guitar-wise, I've tended to use Guitar Pro, but hey, I've heard Tux Guitar is a thing, so maybe we'll see that being packaged in Ubuntu Studio from now on. Who knows? But yeah, and just to have the most updated version is really, really useful. And the one other big thing that's been added in this particular version is Ubuntu Studio controls. Now, this is the big daddy of controlling the audio all the way through your computer. I can't even imagine getting into half of this stuff. Obviously, having it set up as is has been fine for me, but if the standard jack isn't quite doing it just on its own, you'll get it to work through this. This gives you total and utter control over your audio. A level of control I don't quite see throughout Windows. Luckily, I've never had huge issues. I've had big issues with running audio through Macintosh computers, but actually running through Windows, it's always been pretty fine, but I've always been in a position where I don't know where I'd go if things went wrong. Whereas with Ubuntu Studio, it gives you that control panel up from the start. If stuff goes wrong, this is how you'd fix it. This gives you unprecedented control over your audio going in and out of your computer. So that's all well and good if you're a musician, if you're working in general with audio, because that can help in video as well. But what if you do other things? Well, this comes with a whole lot of other stuff involved. So for graphic design, we have things like GIMP. I think Critter is included as standard, but I've removed that now as I don't tend to use it. In the video editing department, of course, we have Everybody's Bay, KG and Live. There's also the opportunity to use stuff like OpenShot. Oh, these are things that just come in pre-installed, by the way. Of course, being based on Ubuntu, which means also being based on Debian, you have the possibility to install all this other software, as well as proprietary software. So jumping back to music quickly, if you want to do something like Reaper, this can be installed on there, or you can simply install snap packages or flat packs to get other software working. One of those in particular that I've been using is OBS itself, which they've now, like I said, they'd included it by as standard now, but it was the Deb version, which is a 0.01 release. This one is actually, I believe I'm using the Snap Pack version here, which is nice and up to date, and and it works really, really well. And yeah, it's nice to know that all the audio that's coming in right now is going to be going through a low latency kernel, so don't have any steps missed, although I've had to take that line about 3 times now, because I talk way too quickly. Let's slow it down, shall we? So as well as that, we obviously have Inkscape. There's loads and loads of software that comes pre-installed. In fact, if you have a look at this video that I'm going to put up on the screen right now, which is actually my initial look, this is what a fresh install looks like with all the software still intact. Now you're looking at my video is everything I've kept behind. You know, some things aren't installed by standard, like Handbrake, but not everyone necessarily needs that. There would also be things like Blender, which I know is super useful for, I think people use it for stuff like game design, as well as animation and video editing. It's the whole shebang. It's everything you could possibly need. This distribution is less of a conventional operating system as you'd think of it, although you can use it like that. As you know, you can see I've got Steam on here. I do use it as a conventional operating system, but imagine it more as a toolkit, and it's a toolkit involving whichever tools you might need for it, and any other tools you don't need, you can just chuck out. But I wouldn't say it's a jack of all trades, because it certainly is not the master of none. It is the master of many. It's the master of all trades. I find this distribution to be super useful Linux distribution. And yeah, if you're thinking about going for it, I would say absolutely go for it. If, for example, you're still using 19.04, then in 5 days' time from this date, that actually reaches end of life. So I would most certainly update at this point. It is very much stable right now, and in fact, actually, let's just jump back onto stability and other things like that. I have had, in general, far less bugs and stability issues with this particular version of Ubuntu Studio than I had in the last version. I've had the typical issue, which I think a lot of people find with all the Ubuntu derivatives. It takes Wine a little bit of time to actually work, probably about 2 or 3 weeks, but the Wine project is such a large project that the fact that they have to sort of repackage things every 6 months probably throws them through a loop. But now that's working absolutely fine. Programs which I had problems with before, like theming problems, are all fixed in this. This feels like a far more solid version. In fact, if anything, I would almost say that the Ubuntu Studio team and the Ubuntu team have done such a good job on 19.10 that you could almost see this as being a candidate for a long-term support release if it was released, obviously, at the right time and the right date. So if you're simply considering using this for any other reason, any of the reasons you've seen, absolutely, I do recommend going for it. If you haven't used many GNU Linux systems before, then there'll be a bit of a learning curve, but the XFCE desktop environment is super stable. It'll run on almost anything, as far as I can tell. It boots super quick. It's so very usable, and this to me it's how I do so much work on this channel. So almost everything I do, all the graphic design and all the video editing, all of that is done through this distribution. Even though I have some of the same software, like GIMP, for example, on my Windows drive, I don't tend to do it on there. I do it on here. The experience just feels that much better. And really, the only thing I don't do all the time over here is I don't do all the motor stuff just yet. You know, even though I've been singing the praises of the audio, I'm just still very much used to using Pro Tools. But I'm considering migrating over. I might have a look at Reaper or Ardor. It's just been the exact tool I need. And as someone who earns a living as a musician, this has been very useful towards everything I do as well. All the music software that comes in there, especially for like writing, arranging, printing, doing quick recordings, doing editing, stuff like that. Super useful. Ubuntu Studio 19.10, I would say, has been a resounding success. And if you're up for trying it, absolutely spin it up on a virtual machine first. But bearing in mind, it's not always going to perform as well on there as it will on a real computer. I have mine on a real computer, and I love using it. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can stick them in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video, which I think will be a guitar-related video. And yeah, until next time, goodbye.